Peace and blessings, and welcome to Search Out the Matter. I'm Jay, and thanks for joining me as I seek the truth of Yah's Word. In this study, we will be looking at chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians. So let's begin. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. So let's go to Genesis 1. And we're going to look at verse 28. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it. So we see here that this was given as a commandment to the man and the woman when they were created. And it wasn't just a commandment, it was also the very first blessing that God pronounced. And we saw in the covenant series that he said the same thing to Noah and his sons after the flood. And this is also a part of the blessing of Abraham. So it is a blessing for a man to touch a woman as God commanded. Now in Matthew 19, Yeshua does talk about eunuchs for different reasons, but in general, the command and blessing was to be fruitful and multiply. 2. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. I thought that I had a verse to support this in Deuteronomy, but upon further inspection, it doesn't appear to be speaking of marriage. But overall, this is a good principle. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise, also the husband hath not power over his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. But I speak this by permission and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and one after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And if we look at this word burn, it says to set on fire, to burn, pass. So I believe that it is commonly accepted that this means burn with passion. So just wanted to point that out. 10. And unto the married I command, not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband, but and if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. So let's go to Matthew 5. And verse 31. It hath been said, Whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced, committeth adultery. So let's go to Matthew 19. Verse 3. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away, doth commit adultery. His disciples say unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. But he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. So the first thing I want to do here is to establish the meaning of adultery. So let's go to Leviticus 20 and verse 10. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. So here we see that adultery is committed with another man's wife, meaning that adultery is dependent on the status of the woman. If the woman is married and is intimate with someone other than her husband, then both of them are adulterers. So adultery does not say anything about the status of the man. And if we go into the Hebrew and look at the word adultery, under Brown Driver Briggs 1a, it says usually of man, always with the wife of another. So adultery is dependent on the status of the woman. And this is why, even though Solomon had 1,000 wives, he was never called an adulterer. So now let's look at the law which the Pharisees questioned Yeshua about. And this is Deuteronomy 24, verse 1. When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. After that, she is defiled, for that is an abomination before Yahuwah, and thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which Yahuwah thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. So we see here that Moses had made this concession for divorce. And in the case that a man sends his wife away and gives her a bill of divorce, once she remarries, he cannot take her back under any circumstances. So she is then completely forbidden from him. And not only is he not allowed to take her back, he is now responsible for her adultery, because in getting remarried, she commits adultery. So back to Matthew 19. The Pharisees ask him in verse 7, they say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it is not so. So first Yeshua corrects them and says Moses did not command this. Moses allowed this. And he wrote this because of the hardness of their heart. And hardness of heart is stubbornness or being stiff-necked. So Moses knew that they were not going to obey the original commands regarding marriage. But Yeshua here is pointing them back to the beginning. And what was at the beginning? Well, it says in verse 5, "For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife. They twain shall be one flesh." So the next thing I want to deal with is verse 9, where he says, "Whosoever shall put away his wife, except for fornication, and marry another, commits adultery." So there is nothing written in the first 5 books of Moses that says that a man cannot put away his wife. But I do want to look at Malachi 2. And we're going to start at 10. "Have we not all one Father? Have not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Judah hath dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah hath profaned the holiness of Yahuwah, which he loved, and hath married the daughter of a strange god. Yahuwah will cut off the man that does this, the master and the scholar, out of the tabernacles of Jacob, and him that offereth an offering unto Yahuwah of hosts. And this have ye done again, covering the altar of Yahuwah with tears, with weeping and with crying out, insomuch that he regardeth not the offering any more, or receiveth it with good will at your hand. Yet ye say, Wherefore? Because Yahuwah hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. And did not he make one? Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. For Yahuwah, the God of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away. For one covereth violence with his garment, saith Yahuwah of hosts. Therefore take heed to your spirit, that ye deal not treacherously." So this text seems to support what Yeshua said in Matthew 19 about if a man puts away his wife and takes another, he commits adultery. So the next thing I want to establish is fornication. So we're going to go to Leviticus 18. And we'll start at verse 6. "None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness. I am Yahuwah. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. The nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or the daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. The nakedness of thy son's daughter, or of thy daughter's daughter, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover, for theirs is thine own nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife's daughter, begotten of thy father, she is thy sister. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's sister. She is thy father's near kinsman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, for she is thy mother's near kinsman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother. Thou shalt not approach to his wife. She is thine aunt. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy daughter-in-law. She is thy son's wife. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy brother's wife. It is thy brother's nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. Neither shalt thou take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness, for they are her near kinswomen. It is wickedness. Neither shalt thou take a wife to her sister, to vex her, to uncover her nakedness, beside the other in her lifetime. Also, thou shalt not approach unto a woman to uncover her nakedness, as long as she is put apart for her uncleanness. Moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife, to defile thyself with her. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am Yahuwah. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. It is confusion. So here we see all of the forbidden relationships, and most of them have to do with your family members, but we have them all here. So it would seem that what Yeshua is saying here is that if you are not in a marriage with one of these people, then you do not have a good cause to put away your wife. Okay, so let's go back to 1 Corinthians 12. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Verse 1. When Yahuwah thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when Yahuwah thy God shall deliver them from before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor shew mercy unto them, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yahuwah be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly. So we see now that this is an additional marriage or relationship that cannot be taken. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23. And we're going to go to verse 32. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. So we see this reiterated. So if you find yourself in one of these marriages, Saul has said that you are not to leave them or put them away. So let's go to Nehemiah. Chapter 13, verse 23. In those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your son or for yourselves. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations was there no king like him, who was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, even him did outlandish women cause to sin. So that goes back to the unbelieving spouse being sanctified by the believing spouse. That's not what happened to Solomon. Solomon was pulled into idolatry. And let's go look at that. This is in 1 Kings chapter 11. Verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which Yahuwah said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect before Yahuwah, his God, as was the heart of David his father. So we see it said that surely your heart will be turned away, and that's exactly what happened to Solomon. Now, he says in verse 14, for the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife sanctified by the husband. We just saw that that wasn't true. Then he says, else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. So let's go to Ezra. We're going to go to chapter 9. Verse 1. Now when these things were done, the princes came to me, saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to their abominations, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. So we see again, even later, these men were persuaded into idolatry by these women. 2. For they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed has mingled themselves with the people of those lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and rulers have been chief in this trespass. And when I heard this thing, I rent my garment and my mantle, and plucked off the hair of my head and of my beard, and sat down astonished. Then were assembled unto me every one that trembled at the words of the God of Israel, because of the transgression of those that had been carried away, and I sat astonished until the evening sacrifice. So let's go to Ezra 10, and we're going to start at verse 1. Now when Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, there assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children, for the people wept very sore. And Shechaniah the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, we have trespassed against our God, and have taken strange wives of the people of the land. Yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. Now therefore let us make a covenant with our God, to put away all the wives, and such as are born of them, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law. So what law is he talking about here? I believe he's referring to Deuteronomy 24, which Moses had already put in place for this specific sin. Arise, for this matter belongeth unto thee. We also will be with thee. Be of good courage and do it. So we see in verse 3 that not only were the women put away, but also those born of them, meaning their children. And if we go down, it lists a bunch of the priests and the different people who had children by these women. And 44 says, all these had taken strange wives, and some of them had wives by whom they had children. So the children were put away as well. And I believe that these foreign marriages are the marriages that Yeshua had in view when he gave that fornication clause. Verse 15, but if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? Regarding verse 16, how do you know if you won't save your husband or wife? You don't, but you do know that God told you not to marry them. So that's that part. Verse 15, he says, if the unbeliever depart, let him depart. For a brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. So some people take this to mean that if the unbeliever departs, you are free to remarry. Now, concerning the woman, by definition, she is an adulteress if she remarries. But for the man, it becomes murky because a man with multiple wives is not necessarily an adulterer. So let's go back to Matthew 19. Verse 4. And he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. So Yeshua here is pointing back to Genesis 2. And in Genesis 2, God created one man and one woman. And if we believe that God knows all, then he knew that Eve would lead Adam to the fruit. But he didn't create a second woman for Adam to abandon Eve to when she defected. So it seems that Yeshua took away even the provision that was given to men for multiple marriages. The next thing I want to look at is Deuteronomy 22. Verse 23. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then ye shall bring them both out unto the gate of that city, and ye shall stone them with stones, that they die. The damsel, because she cried not, being in the city, and the man, because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife. So thou shalt put away evil from among you. So here we have a woman that is engaged. It would be engaged as we consider it now. But back then, it was no engagement. Once you made that commitment, you were that man's wife, even though he didn't get to take you immediately. So this is the case of Joseph and Mary. It's Matthew 1. 18. Now the birth of Yeshua Mashiach was on this wise. When as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily. But as we saw, she was supposed to be stoned according to that law. So how could Joseph be just in not stoning her, but instead putting her away privily? I believe what we see here is a provision of God's grace and his mercy and forgiveness. So from here, I want to go to look at God himself. Hosea 2, verse 2. Plead with your mother. Plead, for she is not my wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts. So God here is talking about Israel. He's saying, she is not my wife and I am not her husband. This is basically a divorce decree, right? So let's skip down to 5. For their mother hath played the harlot. She that conceived them hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, mine oil and my drink. Skip down to 8. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiply her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax, given to cover her nakedness. Okay, let's go to 14. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. And I will give her her vineyards from thence, and the valley of Achor for a door of hope. And she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, and as in the day when she came up out of the land of Egypt. Skip to 18. And in that day will I make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground. And I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. And I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness, and in judgment, and in loving kindness, and in mercies. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know Yahuwah. So here we see God beginning with a divorce decree for this woman, and at the end, we see him bringing her back to betroth her to him forever. So this is a display of God's grace and mercy. And this woman, he calls her an adulteress. So this woman had committed adultery, but in the end, God still brings her back. And the woman, of course, representing Israel. So I will admit right now, marriage has always been a point of contention for me, even since I was a teenager in church. So I am by no means claiming to be some authority on this subject. But based on the precepts that we've read, here's what I believe would be the appropriate counsel regarding marriage. If you have never been married or you are widowed, you should marry someone else who has never been married or is widowed and is a follower of Yeshua in truth. Meaning, you are not to marry someone who claims to be a follower but rejects God's law. If you are a married woman who is married to a man who has previously been married and his wife is not remarried, you need to seek God on his behalf to make sure he is not in an adulterous relationship with you. Now, if his wife is remarried, you need to seek God to make sure that he approves of your marriage. If you are a woman married to an unbeliever, you are to go to God on his behalf, because according to the scriptures, you are not released from him until death. If you are in any immediate danger, then you should separate yourself. But even so, you are to seek God about him until reconciliation or release. If you are a divorced woman, whether or not your husband is remarried, you need to go to God about him, because according to the scriptures, you are not released from him until death. So seek God about him until reconciliation or release. If you are a woman who has remarried or is otherwise involved with a man and your husband is living, you are in an adulterous relationship. You need to temporarily separate yourself and seek God for counsel on next steps. So for men, if you are a man who is married to or otherwise involved with a woman who has been married and her husband is still alive, you are in an adulterous relationship. You need to temporarily separate yourself and seek God for counsel on next steps. If you are a man married to an unbeliever, you need to separate yourself, but even so, you are to go to God on her behalf concerning this marriage. If you are a divorced man and your wife is not remarried, you need to go to God about her. If you are a divorced man whose wife is remarried, Deuteronomy 24 forbids you from taking her back, and considering that she is now an adulteress and the penalty for adultery is death, it would seem you are free to remarry. But by God's own example, he takes Israel back. So you should go to God for counsel on this. If you are a remarried man and your wife has remarried, you need to seek God about your current marriage. And if you are a remarried man and your wife has not remarried, you need to temporarily separate yourself and seek God for counsel on next steps. So that is what I get from the laws on marriage and Yeshua's teachings on marriage. It's a hard word, but the disciples said it was a hard word. 17. But as God hath distributed to every man, as the Lord hath called every one, so let him walk. And so ordain I in all churches. Is any man called being circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's freeman. Likewise, also he that is called, being free, is Christ's servant. Ye are bought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God. So we already saw in the covenant series that circumcision is the covenant of Abraham. And we also saw regarding Israel that God didn't promise Israel servantry. He promised that they will be the head and not the tail. They will be above only and not beneath. And he also left the gateway for the Gentiles to come under Israel's covenant. So why is Saul closing that gate? The next thing I want to address is abiding wherein you are called. Now, I know in this particular context, it is talking about marriage, but he also did throw in circumcision there. So I just want to remind you of Matthew 22, which is the parable of the wedding feast, where the king comes in and sees the man without the wedding garment on. And he asks him, why did you come in here without a wedding garment? So it's not about remaining how you were called. It's about making sure you have on the appropriate garments for the occasion. 25. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment, as one that have obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose therefore that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. By the present distress, I'm thinking maybe Saul is talking about the persecutions that are occurring during that time. 27. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loose from a wife? Seek not a wife. But and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Okay, so concerning being bound to a wife, if you find yourself engaged to someone you should not be engaged to, you need to call that off. So you should, in that case, seek to be loosed. And it is not less than the high calling if after you are loosed, you seek someone else to marry. Because in Genesis 2, God said it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him. And even Yeshua came for a bride. 28. But and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. Sure, you might have trouble in the flesh, but I believe that within the context of a marriage, God uses each of the partners to purge out issues from the other one. 29. But this I say, brethren, that time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of the world passeth away. So in this, I'm not really sure what Saul is saying. I'm not sure if he's saying the first shall be last and the last shall be first, or whether he was expecting the world to end. So I can't address this. 32. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the world, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. So the majority of the people that we see in the scriptures are married. Moses was married, and God said Moses was faithful in all his house. Abraham was married and was still obedient to God. Whenever God told Abraham to do something, he did it. Samuel, the prophet who anointed both of the kings, was also married. It says that he had sons. So Saul is making it seem here like either you can be married or you can serve God. And that's simply not the case. And what if God called you to be married? God said that you should not deal treacherously against the wife of your youth because he seeks a godly seed. 36. But if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will. He sins not. Let them marry. Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. Again, Saul is exalting being single above being married and casting a shadow on marriage as if it is an ungodly desire of the flesh. The wife is bound by the law as long as her husband lives. But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she so abide after my judgment. And I think also that I have the Spirit of God. Whether Saul has the Spirit of God is yet to be determined. But what we do see is that where Saul places this high esteem on remaining single and says that he would prefer all men to be as he is, God said, be fruitful and multiply, because he is seeking a godly seed. And now we can see why God's holy institution of marriage is being perverted the way it is and is being attacked on all sides, because it is the very institution that he uses to build his kingdom. So thank you again for joining me. Feel free to drop any comments, concerns, agreements, or disagreements in the comment section below. I hope that this study has blessed you and inspired you to search further into Yah's word. May Yahuwah bless you and keep you. May Yahuwah shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.